This presentation is for industrial stormwater permittees who have finished a year of sampling requirements and want to know what to do after the required Year 2 sampling year is over. We are going to cover 5 aspects of what you need to do when your Year 2 of sampling has ended. This presentation will help you understand what you need to do whether you passed, exceeded, or couldn't collect any samples within Year 2, what you have to do in Year 3 and Year 4, and where to find the tools to help you with next steps. I will provide an overview of benchmark monitoring requirements, provide information about the data sent to the MPCA so far, and what you need to do in Year 3 and beyond. The next few slides will review some of the basic requirements of benchmark monitoring. There are 3 additional messages. Number 1, the benchmark values are not limits. Number 2, an exceedance for either a single sample or the yearly average is not a violation. And number 3, not sending in forms or not making changes after a yearly average of exceedances, those are violations. For permittees who complete their Year 2 of sampling and their averaged results do not exceed for all parameters at all chosen monitoring locations, the permittee has no more monitoring to conduct for the rest of this general permit, which expires April 2015. If this applies to you, you may stop watching this presentation now. Keep your BMPs in good condition and keep conducting your monthly inspections. For permittees who are unable to collect a sample in Year 2, whether or not stormwater monitoring report forms were submitted, they will have to go through Year 4 sampling requirements. For those who exceed for their Year 2 results, permittees have Year 3 to make changes and sample again in Year 4. There are no required Year 3 sampling requirements for benchmark monitoring. For permittees who exceed and discharge either to an impaired water or an outstanding resource value water, these permittees have less time to make changes to their stormwater pollution prevention plan and to their BMPs before sampling again in Year 4. Read the permit or review information on the website for more information. Also, if you have multiple parameters and or multiple monitoring locations, you only have to resample in Year 4 for the parameters you had an exceedance for at the locations you had an exceedance at. You do not have to sample the parameters you passed for the yearly average in Year 2. Remember, if you had an exceedance for either a single sample or for the yearly average, it's not a violation. Benchmark values are action levels, requiring you to take action if you exceed for your yearly averages. But if you didn't take any samples and did not provide no-flow explanations on the stormwater monitoring report forms, or if you exceeded for the year and don't make changes to your stormwater pollution prevention plan or your facility, those are violations. Let's take a look at the results submitted so far by all permittees who have submitted benchmark monitoring data. These results were analyzed early June 2012 and only represent individual samples and not yearly averages. Generally, the results are pretty good. A lot of the individual samples do not exceed the benchmark values. Total suspended solids is a pollutant parameter that all permittees must sample for. 64% of the results are below the benchmark values. That's good news. For those who exceed, many of the samples are just over the benchmark value of 100 milligrams per liter, though it's 65 milligrams per liter for those discharging to a non-wetland outstanding resource value water. The arrow is pointing to pollutant parameter's benchmark value. Iron is the second most common pollutant to sample for. As you can see, there is a lot of room for improvement for this pollutant parameter, with 70% of the individual results representing exceedances. And with a benchmark value goal of 1 milligram per liter, a lot of permittees have a lot of really high exceedances. Hopefully, these permittees are making best management practice changes. Aluminum is another common pollutant parameter to sample for. Again, with a benchmark value of 1.5 milligrams per liter, many permittees have exceeded for one or more monitoring interval, and many of the exceedances are quite high. As you'll see later, there is a lot of guidance to utilize to consider different best management practices to address these exceedances. For permittees with chemical oxygen demand requirements, 70% of the sample results are not over the benchmark values. Biological oxygen demand, or BOD, has similar results, with 82% of the samples not exceeding the benchmark value. There is room for improvement with zinc. Half of the samples are over the benchmark value. Lead's results are good. 85% of the sample results do not exceed the benchmark value. So overall, the results are good. If permittees with a single or yearly average exceedances make improvements for total suspended solid exceedances, they will likely bring down the values of metal exceedances if they have both to sample for. Let's take a look at what Year 3 means for you. You are not required to conduct benchmark monitoring within Year 3. Permittees are welcome to take samples after trying different BMPs and keeping the results for their own use. But any results sent to the Pollution Control Agency during Year 3 will not count towards any required sampling year's averages. Visit the Permit Information Access page to see if you're required to monitor in Year 4. If you have averaged your own Year 2 results, you probably already know whether or not you passed or exceeded, and whether or not you have to monitor in Year 4. After a year of monitoring, your final Stormwater Monitoring Report form is due the following month. 6 weeks after that, the Permit Information Access Monitoring Calendar page will be updated to let you know if monitoring is required in Year 4 or not. For example, if you received permit coverage June 2010, you finished a year's worth of sampling requirements June 2012. Your final Stormwater Monitoring Report form was due no later than July 21st, 2012. By September 1st, 2012, the monitoring calendar and necessary Stormwater Monitoring Report forms were updated by the Pollution Control Agency. Here's an example facility's Year 2 data. Here's what that facility's monitoring calendar looks like. Year 4 shows that no monitoring is required. Now let's take a look at a facility that had an exceedance for one of their benchmark values in Year 2. Their monitoring calendar indicates they have sampling requirements in Year 4. Their Stormwater Monitoring Report forms are populated to help them get ready for Year 4 sampling requirements. Because they did not exceed for total suspended solids, they do not have to resample for this parameter. They only have to resample within Year 4 for iron. All permittees who have a yearly exceedance in Year 2 should be thinking of different best management practices to implement within Year 3 before sampling again in Year 4. First, consider what non-structural best management practices you can modify. Often, the solutions may include non-structural or simple structural best management practices, such as putting scrap metal waste into a dumpster instead of having it on the ground, or starting or increasing street sweeping. There are some types of best management practices that are a bit more unique in nature and can also help with contaminant sediment removal. If non-structural or simple structural best management practices are not enough, consider structural, costly best management practices last. There are a number of them that work very well at contaminant sediment removal, but may take up a lot of space. We've created a variety of helpful tools that are available to you to help you consider different types of best management practices. Take a look at the Steps to Compliance section of the Industrial Stormwater Program's website. Look at Step 7, Sector-Specific Requirements, Guidance. This step provides information about what's required for each sector and also provides guidance information for every sector. First, each sector-specific chapter of the Industrial Stormwater Permit is broken down into separate, downloadable documents. The Environmental Protection Agency has created fact sheets that provides each sector dozens of best management practice ideas, broken up by pollutant and contaminant, and by activity and material. Here's what an example EPA fact sheet looks like. This fact sheet describes what pollutants are related to which activities or materials. And then it's broken down into best management practice options by those activities or materials. In many cases, the Pollution Control Agency created guidance documents for industry-specific assistance. You'll find that information within this column. Here's an example of that, a pollution prevention fact sheet for the timber products sector. Finally, the Pollution Control Agency scouted other states' resources to find information that would be helpful to permittees on a sector-by-sector basis. Take a look at all parts of the Industrial Stormwater Program website, including the Steps to Compliance section, for a variety of assistance. The website will provide help when considering different best management practices, information about University of Minnesota workshop opportunities, how to sign up and receive quarterly e-newsletters, and more. This PowerPoint presentation is a condensed version of a 4-hour workshop offered through the University of Minnesota Erosion and Stormwater Management Certification Program. Feel free to call the Stormwater Hotline or any of the staff listed within the Industrial Stormwater Program for any questions about exceedances, sampling questions, or other compliance questions for the Industrial Stormwater Permit. The Industrial Stormwater Program would like to thank the following people for all of their hard work and contributions to the information provided in these slides. Thank you for watching this presentation.